Theology by the book. Wes is back. Welcome back, Wes. So I got
Thank you.
adjusting my camera. Good to have you back. You've had
Thank you,
some
sir.
harrowing experiences.
It is life.
Your wife says you prayed my prayer at one point.
I prayed a lot of
me.
prayers.
Cure me or kill me.
Well, I sang a portion of that. Yeah.
Did you? Don't laugh about such things. Yeah, you had the terrible virus and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway,
we're well.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Good. Well, let's see. Make sure I have everything going properly. Christian told me he was going to be a little bit late, so that made me start dragging my feet. That's why we're running a little bit behind. I blame him. What? Then you were on time. That's right. Good for you. So we're chapter 19. Woot. Have you been keeping up with your... Did you say oops?
I said woot.
Oh, okay. I thought you had read the wrong chapter.
No.
So Wes, have you been keeping up with your reading, or did you just skip ahead to 19?
No, I've kept up. Yeah. Some quick chapters here, so wasn't too hard.
I'm trying to find chapter 19.
Page 221.
Well, that helps.
Want me to read the scripture?
Do it.
2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if 1 prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12.
So, like, if 2 brothers are attacking the other brother, if one brother is attacking another, 2 come and help. I just see all this as like, if they fall, the one will lift his fellow up. Wes, how many siblings do you have?
I have one sibling, 8 years apart, so I could not.
It's a brother. You have a brother, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's 8 years older than you.
8 years older. Yeah.
Okay. So when you were 8, he was 16.
Yeah.
And how well did you get along?
We didn't really, it wasn't until we grew up that we really formed any sort of relationship, really. Yeah.
And that's not that unusual, I think, for siblings to kind of develop better relationships as they get older. Yeah. I mean, my wife was much younger than her siblings. So I don't think it was, well, yeah, I mean, anyway, much younger. How about you, Christian? Peace out. 2?
I got 2 sisters that are older.
Okay. How much older?
Our oldest sister is 7 years older than me, and then my other sister is, bear with me, she's 6 months older than me. She's stepsister. They both are.
Okay. That's good.
My parents got remarried when I was 6.
Okay.
And, so they're my sisters. I've had them all my life, and I don't remember life without them.
And then I have a sister. She's younger by 3 years, maybe something like that. 2 or 3 years. We're fairly close in age, and I tortured her mercilessly probably when she was younger. Not too bad, really, actually. But we got along much better now. The older we got, the better we became friends.
That's what Lewis was going to say about Grayson. I was tortured mercilessly.
Tortured mercilessly. At least. So, all right. And then you have, Wes, how many children do you have?
Trez.
Okay. And you want to, I don't know what detail you want to share with the world. Ages?
4.
Gender, sexes?
Yeah. 4-year-old boy, 1-year-old little girl, and almost 2-month-old little girl.
So
pretty close.
So that'll be interesting as they. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, so you got a they have an older brother. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
And then Christian, you're
I got
array of children.
4, 11, 9, 4, and 2.
11, 9, 4, 2, and genders,
And
sexes.
that's it. Oh, 3 boys and 1 girl.
Okay.
And a girl
And
second from the
second, yeah. So
second
that
one.
works out well. Yeah. So, so good. So you guys, Wes, you get to you're already dealing with this somewhat, but as they get older, you'll see a lot more. I mean, you'll continue to see a lot more differences in our children. We had 4 children growing up. Lee was the oldest, and he was pretty much, gosh, how much older was he than the other kids? He was probably about 10 years older. And then we had Ian and Chandler and Snejana. So Lee is my stepson, and then Ian and Chandler, and we adopted Snejana, and she was older than the 2 boys.
That all makes sense now. Thank you. Like I need it.
So it was like this, and so yeah.
You got grandkids that I don't. I'm like,
I was about to say if you need him to confuse you again, he can. I'm sure.
No, that's good.
It can be hard to follow. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a grandson, which is ridiculous. Actually, you just have to start early with things, and you end up with grandchildren when you're young like me. So anyway, yeah. So watching grandchildren, siblings, that's an interesting thing. And then when you we would pick up 2 of our grandchildren, a boy and a girl, and they're close in age. And when they first get in the car, they're, like we'll give them like a 2-hour, 15-minute ride or an hour and a half, come into our house in their car with us, and everything seems fine at first, and then all of a sudden, one of them enjoys, I'm going to hit you in the head with my flip flop, and and then hilarity ensues. And then it's like, okay, grandparenting siblings who are fighting with each other is real fun because you have very little threatening authority. like they know you love them and you're not going to do anything to them, and they're just playing, So it's into grandparenting. That's a whole nother book that needs to be written. So they're good kids though, so it wasn't like they were actually in danger of had to go to the hospital or something like that. It was just like, leave her alone, and you adjust the mirrors properly in the car. You guys know how to do that. Well, Wes, you might not have had to do that yet, but you've done that, Christian. I'm sure you adjust the rearview mirror in the car so that you're no longer looking at cars behind you, but I'm keeping an eye on you, and as soon as you move, it's like, aha.
Well, the good thing is Grayson and Adeline sit in the way back, and so I don't even have to adjust the mirror. They're framing my view out the rear.
There you go. We had a, I can't remember what kind of car, a van that had that extra row in the back, and we had enough children where you could put one would go all the way in the back. All right, you're in the back, and it was kind of cramped back there. So. Anyway, so this chapter is about sibling relationships, in case people haven't picked up. And we didn't introduce what we're doing in case somebody just stepped in on it. But it's this book. I don't have the cover, but it's Parenting by God's Promises by Dr. Joel Beeke. We're not reading the book. We're reading the book together as some people in the church or elsewhere, and then we're just talking about it here. And so just overview, I think, just what in the world?
Had to kiss the baby, man.
It sounded. It's not what it sounded like.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's all right. Good job. So just anybody want to take a stab at just like a quick thing without even looking at the book, sort of what stood out to you or anything?
I find it interesting that if you are dissatisfied with second place in a race, you are one step away from being Satan himself.
You're Luciferian, is that?
I mean, that's what I got out of it.
That's just true. That's good. Teach your children to be non-competitive with each other. Families attack other families, but not intra-family attacking. So here's the little quick story that I had with Ian and Chandler, my two boys. It was a birthday. We talk about this all the time. There's a birthday, and so we have all this, February birthdays. But Ian doesn't have the February birthday. He has to wait till the end of April, and so he's used to everybody keeps having birthdays, and then so. He had Chandler got some kind of a swing, got a swing, and they put it outside, and he got it hooked up and stuff. And Ian's out there just swinging in it, and his grandfather goes out there, Amy's dad, and says, he says, "Come on, son." He says, "You need to share." And Ian said, "I am sharing." And so his point, because I know how he thinks, was this is sharing. I'm on the other side of the sharing. Okay, he says, "I am sharing. I'm on this. I'm being shared with." So there's sharing happening. So even at that age, and I don't know, I don't know how old he was, 4. Yeah, and so the line though, so his grandfather got him though, because Ian said, "I am sharing." He said, "Well, you've been sharing a long time, son." So we just use that a lot. You've been sharing a long time, and yeah. So one of the things too, I think, is kids are all different, and so trying not to show favoritism. It's like I don't think I'm sure a lot of parents have favorites. It's just I'm sure you kind of see it, but I don't think like I didn't have favorites. You just have different relationships with your children, and you would like I would never walk across a plank across two skyscrapers unless I had to do it to save my child, like I would do. And that's like I would take a bullet for my child just without thinking. And well, I hope it wouldn't be without thinking, but you know what I mean. So but each child is different, so that one child may be more like me. We've talked about this. You can guess which is which. One child more like me, one child more like Amy. So it's easier for me to relate to the child that's like me, because when I see him acting like me, I either get angry about it because it's like, don't do that, or I empathize a great deal. That's typically the situation. I can empathize because I know where he's coming from. But when the other child who acts like Amy will act like Amy, what are you doing? And then Amy comes in with all the empathy. And so that could come across to the children as, you empathize with him, but you don't empathize so much with me. So you have to be careful with that, because you don't want that to be like, yeah, I enjoy this child more than I enjoy that child. And so I think he does talk about that some, being able to be careful about communicating to all your children how much you love them, and trying to find out, about them so that you can participate with them, equally in life.
Well, can I piggyback on that for a second?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's even it takes that intentionality, and the awareness that is true. But I think that is especially important when you have, like in our case, we've got 2 older and 2 younger. And like Lewis takes a lot of attention, just like Wes. I know I can't remember your baby's name all of a sudden. Annalise. She's going to take a ton of attention because of, you have to do everything for them. And, so for us, that means, okay, what am I doing on the other side with the older kids? How are we intentionally kind of spending time with them and doing things that they want to do too? Because you can't help it. It's not like you can be like, okay, we're just going to forget about Lewis for now. But what you can do is, try to kind of balance it out a little bit somehow. But when you have young kids, that's tricky and super important. That's all.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it is hard to. I was thinking when we would go to go out to eat somewhere, like not anywhere fancy, but just like, where do y'all want to go eat?
Are we going somewhere right now?
Do what?
Sorry.
What'd you say?
I said, are we going somewhere right now?
Yeah. So, it was like, and nobody ever wanted to go to the same place. And so it was like, how do you navigate that kind of thing? And so being somewhere that had several restaurants, we could just go, well, we go to McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. Let's go. What do? You do each one of them, and everybody gets what they want or something. But we had this. Here's the genius thing I found. Maybe you guys knew about this, but the trick is, it's like, okay, you have one something left, and we'll split it in half. But if you get all these kids, you don't know what you do when you're in that situation. But what the thing was is, like, one person gets to cut it in half, and the other person gets to choose his piece. And it was like, that's perfect. So that way you can't, there's no fighting, but they'll fight over who gets to cut. And so, we get, and Eric, who I was on the phone with when you guys heard me before we came on, his grandchild, 3 grandchildren over at once. And Eric, we have a story about him that he always would, he just lunged across the table one time, like in the dining room, and he just pointed his finger at his little brother, and he said, "You lying on me. Why is everybody always lying on me?" And I walked in and I said, and he's just enraged. And I said, Eric, come here. And he's like, "Why are you always coming at me? Why are you always coming at me? Why don't you say something to him? Why don't you say something to him?" And I said, "Eric, you turned into the Hulk. And when the Hulk is in the room, you got to deal with the Hulk." It's like, I don't care what caused him to get mad. The Hulk is in the room. So, but being able to have those types of conversations, even with them, it's like, you have to do that. And then what I liked about the chapter the most was that you're teaching your children that they are actually, I think he used the word, that they're actually parenting one another as well, like to help them know that you're teaching your siblings. You have this responsibility, and as they get older, that might be something that they learn more about. But that's, you have a responsibility to one another. I thought that was a good point. I thought he was frozen there. He was either staring at me stoically. Christian, just, he backed off for a second here now.
Yeah.
So he just says, there are a lot of books that talk about fathers and mothers' role in raising children, but they don't say much about the roles of brothers and sisters in raising each other. And so, I wouldn't want to put too much on that on children because of immaturity and things, but just to plant that in their minds so that they are thinking in these ways. He makes a point on page 223 that boys and girls will be different. Mm-hmm. And so you have to know that you're going to nurture them differently. And then you teach them that, you'll teach Judah that his 2 sisters are not going to like doing exactly the same things that he's going to do all the time. And some of it's because they're girls. And so the 2 grandkids that we have living with us now are 10 and 13. And we're just watching the girl as she's getting 13, 14, 15. And Christian's out there, right now she's playing football and she's tackling him. She's the older sister, and it frustrates him because she's, she loves being able to outrun him or knock him down or something. But it's not going to, like, if there were 2 brothers, like Ian and Chandler, it was like, hey, one day Chandler's going to grow up and you're not going to be able to throw him around like that. Yeah. But with Sophia, it's going to be one day she's not going to want to go out there and be playing football with you like that. She's going to have other interests, and she's just not going to want to do this. And that's going to be, harder on him, I think. And then on page 224, he just makes the point that favoritism will yield bitter results. So you do have to be careful with favoritism. And I'd say even perceived favoritism, because it's not hard to have that rear its head. Again, especially if you're a kid, like if you have, if you 2 girls, 1 boy, you might like, Christian says he's back now. And so he might, let's see, I think I might have to pop him back in then. Yep. Thank you, Christian. like you might like, hey, let's go hunting, let's go fishing, let's go play football. And then the girls are like, I don't want to do that. So, you'll have to be a little more intentional about trying to engage with them in things but if you love your children, it's not really hard to do because I find that typically you want to do things with them more than they want to do things with you at a certain age. And so it starts to get like spend all the time with them when you're little, because the older they get, they start to want some independence and things. And that can be a frustrating thing.
Well, and these, like, with different natured kids, I mean, it really is good training ground for the rest of their lives to learn to adapt and work with different personalities, different wants, different needs, because they're going to deal with that their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can learn to do that with their siblings, it'll benefit them now, it'll benefit the church, it'll benefit them for the rest of their lives, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, learning how to play together so that the other person will play with them again. He talks about, I think the second place thing is like winning at all costs. It's even when you're playing a game, any sort of sport, unless you're playing professional sports, I guess, you have to have the ability to, Jordan Peterson talks about this some. He's like, you want to learn to play games in a way that you win, but the other person still wants to come back and play again. It's no fun to win all the time if nobody wants to play with you. And so you have to kind of, be cool about that. Page 225, he says, sinners will fight. And so and it is helpful to remember that your children are sinners, that you are sinners, your wife's a sinner. And so you have to put a check on that too. You have to be careful of your proclivities of dealing with frustrations of, sinners dealing with sinners can be a problem. So the Galatians passage, it talks about discipline in the church, but it's also, the household of, the Bible says if you can't rule the household of God, if you can't manage your household, then you can't be an officer in the church because you can't. It's the household of God. But it talks about if anyone is caught in a sin, then you who are spiritual should what's the word? Say something. Restore them, with gentleness, watching yourself lest you too fall into sin. So the same thing with your children. It's easy to, chastise, get angry with your children because they're getting angry with each other. So you have to, hopefully we've had time to develop maturity and self-control to some points. We don't always have that, but we need to recognize it quickly and then demonstrate to our children how you back off of it and say, dad gets upset sometimes too. And I have to just take a breath. You talk about the ways that you've learned how to deal with your own short-temperedness and that sort of thing. How do you deal with, Christian? I don't think you've ever really lost your temper with your children. How do you, that was a perfect time for a spit take. You picked up your cup and everything. So how do you deal with it when you've,
how do I deal with it when I lose my temper with my children?
The once or twice in your life that you may have done it.
Oh,
you just are so easygoing. Do you ever lose your temper?
Of course.
Okay. Then what do you do?
Usually ask for forgiveness.
Okay.
When I lose my temper illegitimately.
Illegitimate, right? Right. You've lost your temper. You did not have you were out of control. Your emotions carried your decision making.
That's where, there's been many times I've had to later on, maybe it's at the end of the day when we're going to bed, say, hey, look, I really messed up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you did wrong. I should not have done what I did. I should not have reacted the way that I did.
And I've found that children tend to be very forgiving.
Absolutely.
When you do that, I mean, that's a good thing. It's like they're quick to say, oh, it's all right. They appreciate the fact that you recognized it. So, and it is a good thing. So we'll go into my trauma. I don't mean to mock it, but so like my dad would get mad a lot. He just had a temper, but he didn't like strike you or me or anything. He just like angry, and so it's like okay, but he never came back later and just said. I mean, I couldn't imagine him coming and saying, "Hey, sorry about that." You know, I kind of he's been raised like that. You know, you didn't do that kind of thing, and so it can, but I just I don't know, maybe because of that, I was going to be more intentional about not being like that. And then when you were like that, it's like, hey, I'm sorry. And then when you get that, it's just a relationship. I think my dad may have had trouble with relationships in that way and stuff. But I think you need to
Why
try to
that's
have
good.
yeah, yeah. So, having a relationship with your children is a good thing. Loving your children is a good thing. Loving your wife is a good thing. It's playing with them, interacting with them, wrestling with them, all the things that you do as a dad. I think we've kind of got over that a little bit, but I do think in earlier generations, it was a little more stoic or something, possibly. I'm not sure how all that worked, and I don't think it
Detached.
detached is good, and I don't think it produced the best results, in that way. So, it's good to, actually, and I think maybe that's what's caused some parents to overdo it with their children, where they just almost now they idolize their children, or they, it's just they live through their children now. So you have to be careful with that. He talks about on page starts on 225. As the sinners will fight, he says. And he gives these reasons. One, children fight by nature. They strive for several things. One is they strive for independence, and that's a good point. They strive for freedom without boundaries, they say. And he says, and I put a star by this one. Since many children are allowed to do whatever they please, the enemy becomes anything that stands in the way. So if children are allowed to do anything they please, the enemy becomes anything that stands in their way. And that includes mom, that includes the sibling, includes teachers, anybody. We must teach our children to have Christ-centered, self-denying relationships as siblings. And I read that and I was like, yeah, good luck with that. But but it is. You have to try to connect the gospel to their relationships to one another. And so it sounds, I don't know, how's that? What do you think of that? I mean, obviously you should, but you say that to the average person that maybe goes to church. What do you think they think of that? Trying to teach your children that their relationship with Christ should affect their relationship with each other.
Again, I think it's age dependent. I'm not going to be able to have this conversation with
Yes.
my 4-year-old when he's losing his mind and he's punching his sister. Like that's not when we're going to sit down and talk about
Right,
our
right.
relationship with Jesus. That's when, like, sometimes it just has to be very simple. Like, you are disobeying, or you are being disrespectful. You are being rebellious.
Yeah, you're being mean. Right.
Right. And I mean, if we use those gospel terms, but like I'm not going to be like, Grayson, what's really going on is that you have this sinful nature and you're just mad at anything that stands in your way. Like he's going to look at me and continue screaming.
Yeah.
Well,
but then with an older,
I think there's
there's
the problem in your parenting right there, Christian. Right.
That, and I don't pray with them when I sit down to beat them.
It's terrible. The
I say all of these things. Are you saying I shouldn't be saying them?
No, I'm saying you're better at this than I am.
See, Wes is good at these things.
Yeah. No.
You just had to start early. Yeah, so it does depend on the age of the children, the way that you can communicate. But I think if you have it in your mind that, if you look at your children and you look at them a little bit differently, and then you think the way they interact with each other is something I need to help parent as well,
Oh,
not
sure.
just to say, don't do that, don't do this. Well, I remember we had these conversations about, well, it's funny, sharing again. It was, there's these toys, and somebody wants to play with a toy, and it's like, but that's his toy. Well, I want to play with it. So does one child have to ask permission to play with the other child's toy? And if the other child just says no, then do you say, but you have to share? And do you enforce that sharing with somebody? It's all these fairness things that you start to deal with. And it is good to say, because then you can talk about, Jesus would, what would, we think of others as more important than ourselves. Why would you're being selfish, but you're also being greedy and trying to take, get two, one's wanting to hold on to what he has, the other wants to steal what he has. And you say, well, just let him have it, or you quit. It's like, go ahead, Christian.
I just think, the thing that I always come back to, and I find that, by golly, it applies to like 99% of the situations, the interpersonal situations that we see with our kids. And I'd have to go back and look. I don't know that he highlights it, but it's simply, Jesus said it, so I figure it's decent. He said, are you treating others the way that you want to be treated?
Right. That the golden rule.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like that just about hits it all the time. Like, okay, stop, hold on. Are you treating your brother the way that you want to be treated? And the answer most of the time is no.
And even neither of you are treating the other person
right. Right.
And so I'm taking it from you. We're removing. I was all about engineering problems out. That was a lot of things. And Amy was quick. It's like, if this toy is causing this kind of problems, where's my hammer?
Oh, yeah.
I was always like,
Yeah.
oh,
Andrew
man.
all the time says, is this worth breaking fellowship over? This thing, this toy.
I was always rescuing toys out of the trash can and stuff. She still fusses at me. It's like, how did this get out of the trash can? I was like, they love that toy. It's like, yeah, they were.
I love that toy.
Yeah, I know. I was like, okay. So, but yeah, that's very good. I do. The golden rule is a very handy tool to pull out, because it's true. Because it also talks about the two things: independence and power. They're striving for power, and third, they're striving to win. Just to have dominance over the other person. And as children, they are. They're they're immature. You don't know. You're trying to. You learn as you go. Children learn as you go, and so you hope you can be this wise overlord type parent that knows the gospel and knows the children and knows the right thing to do and says the right thing. But it's just such a difficult thing to navigate. So he talks about praying for wisdom and praying for grace, and then being thankful that God's parenting our children as he's parenting us through our children too. It's very important to know. And then to not be all upset. He does make a good point about not being all upset about when you see sibling rivalry, when you see the problems that the kids are having with each other, to know it's like, okay, this is normal. Your wife has commented in the chat room.
Indeed, I was noticing that, but I'm powerless to do anything about it.
Oh, you could read it out loud. She says, here, I think I can put it on the screen. She said, Don't Be a Dragon. Great practical book, Living the Little Years by Rachel Joe.
Yeah, it's actually Loving the Little Years.
What did I say? Loving the Little Years. Oh, there's her. She made a little Loving. Okay, you got to keep reading. So I haven't heard of that book. I'm going to trust Andrea. Have you read it?
I have not. No, I think I probably should. In fact, I'm going to go now.
You probably should, yeah.
I'm sure it's good.
Maybe that should be our next one.
Okay. All right, and then let's see, moving along. Driving power. He says, "What practical steps?" Page 227. Let me take her up there. So, what practical steps? I lost it. Okay, but it says developing healthy sibling relations right above it. Practical steps that can help us teach our children how to have healthy sibling relationships. First, teaching our children the gospel of Jesus Christ, the gospel of peace. All right, so then he says some additional teachings. He said, one, training our children to worship with each other. So family worship is good. You're worshiping at church, praying for with each other, doing that everybody in a circle, or whatever, praying. Um, and he says at the bottom paragraph, he says that their relationships go deeper than genetics. The Christian family is holy, is claimed by the Lord for his sacred purpose. And I do think, to your point, Christian, I think if you sit in the middle of your family and you say, listen, what our family is holy, it's set apart for holy purposes as unto the Lord, as it says. And, I think that depending on ages, I don't know if ever that might be who you are or who I am to say. Wes would say it, but it needs to be, I think it's to be assumed by the parents that this is what it is, and then somehow it becomes communicated to the family because it's an assumption that you have. So I think a lot of the assumptions that you have get communicated to your children in one way or the, even if you don't come right out and say these things. But if you assume the family is holy, you'll end up, and you keep that in your mind, that the family is something God has instituted. Covenant families, living together. I mean, God put a family together. It's not just because of genetics. God ordained that these people would live together as parents and children, and then later grandchildren. And so, recognizing the holiness of that is an important thing. And by holiness, it's set apart by God for a specific purpose, just like the church is. And two, he says, train our children to love each other. And third, training them to do that. And third, train our children to teach and learn from each other. And that was kind of a neat little section. As they get older, you get an older brother. If you have a brother and a sister, sister can learn to be confide in one another, so that they're able to talk about different things that are happening in their lives, and to kind of talk about dating relationships or things like this. Train your children to enjoy each other, page 230, by cultivating healthy social interactions in our families. Eating a meal together every day is central to interactions, and including fun outings and things. And I know you guys do that. I think, whenever we did stuff, Amy and I were like, we just felt weird not having our kids with us. And so, but you also need to take time to just, you and your spouse, go out together so that you develop that relationship too. So you don't just develop a relationship with your children. It's important to maintain your marital relationship. And then the last section is patient and dependent parenting. As we lead our children away from sibling rivalry toward sibling unity, you have to be patient. We remember that children go through stages in their trek from immaturity to maturity. In everything, we need to seek God's wisdom. This is that bottom paragraph. We need His grace to make wise decisions and fostering good relationships between our children. But I think being patient, and I don't know, it seems like I was talking to somebody, maybe it was one of you guys, and I said, you have a lot of, I might remember who it was. Yeah. I said, you have several different, how many children do you have now? You got a lot of different personalities. He said, well, each child is a different personality from day to day. He said, I got so many children living in my house. So, and it's not just, day to day is different too, but as they get older and mature and, revert to immaturity, and then you have the dynamics that are going to change within a family. It can be overwhelming if you have it as your goal to keep everything just like it ought to be. You've got to allow for children to mess up, to get angry, to be sinners. You just want to warn them and try to train them as much as you're able to avoid certain proclivities they may have towards negative character traits that you want to try to nip in the bud before it gets goes along too much. But I think bearing all the blame for how your children behave can be a problem too, because then you get real angry at your children when they misbehave because they're not cooperating with your plan. That's it. That's all I got.
I think the best line of this whole chapter is on 231 here at the ending, in the section on patient independent parenting, and it says our best approach is to keep on parenting, knowing that in time and by God's grace, our efforts will bear good fruit. And to me, that just sums it up, man. Days can get really hard, especially the chaotic ones. And, for us, it's just keeping the hand to the plow, faith, realizing that good fruit will come. And it does. It does. It may just be a one-liner from the 4-year-old, and you'll be like, wow, it's working. Through the chaos, through it all, it's working, So
I had somebody, I don't know if you know somebody, Josh Silver said, really appreciate these lives, new father here.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something,
Welcome.
Yeah. It's an adventure. It is, so, and you learn about yourself. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you think, I know there were things that I thought I had dealt with years ago, and all of a sudden something happens. It's like, where'd that come from? I thought I didn't get mad about that anymore, or I saw Ian one time. He was real little. He just came running across the yard, and he was like crying about something, and it was just like me. I was like, I was just like that. And I was like, and I told him, I told Amy, I said, why is he like that? I always blame my mom and dad for me being like that. We haven't done anything to him yet. It's just personal. It's the way you are. So yeah, you learn a lot, and it is good. Just keep loving your children. That's the thing, and trusting that God's at work too. All right. So
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I think too, it's like what I've noticed since we started having children is, and it's by God's design, is having children will expose things that maybe you could have concealed before you started having children. And these things can be painful, but everything's brought to light, and it's God's design, and it really, through having this family, you will grow closer to God. You will see things differently. You will get on your knees more, and that's where we need to be, So, but tough, but very rewarding.
You also learn about the relationship, God the Father, God the Son. Like why, he didn't have to create humans like having children. He obviously did it to communicate something about his relationship. And so when you see, your relationship to your child, you get a little more intimate look into the Trinity a little bit, and vice versa, looking back at your parents and things. So yeah, it's something God has put here for a reason. For sure. Everything he does is for a reason. All right. So 9:08 is when we're supposed to start. So we do random verses, bad exegesis. A verse without a context is a subtext. Is that what?
Or a pretext.
A pretext. That's what it is. A verse without a context is a pretext, right? So what are we up to?
Our out of context verse tonight comes from Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 8. You found his heart faithful before you, and made with him the covenant to give his offspring the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Jebusite, the Girgashite, and you have kept your promise, for you are righteous. So obviously that applies directly to my life, and he has given me the land of the Hittite, the Canaanite, the Amorite. No, that's not how we do
Well, brother, the cattle on 1,000 hills are yours.
Right there. Go and claim it.
But it does. He is a covenant-making God,
And
Yeah,
covenant
that's
keeping
right.
God. And
and
righteous.
that we can
Keeps
we
his
can apply to
promises.
our lives.
And every promise is yes and amen in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Well, thank you guys. Wes, it's good to have you back.
Yeah, good to be here,
And
fellas.
Christian, I appreciate your time doing this stuff with us.
Always
And
a
we'll
pleasure.
see you Thursday possibly, and I'll see you guys Wednesday
There's no
possibly.
telling. You will not see me Thursday actually, because I'm going to be probably over in the lower school building doing some stuff.
Okay.
But I will miss you.
Oh, bless your heart. All right. See y'all later.